This is the fourth of a series of tutorials that teach you the basics of 3D Max. In this tutorial, you'll learn how to import furniture, how to import materials, and how to create holes for walls, such as places like doors and windows. So the first thing we're going to do is we're going to enlarge the top viewport. We're going to zoom into the door. We're going to put our snaps back on by pressing S on the keyboard. We're going to go to Create, Shapes, Rectangle, and we're just going to create a rectangle over the part that we want to create the hole in. And then what we're going to do is we're going to go to the Modify tab and we're going to press on Extrude, and the amount is 3 meters, which is 3000 millimeters. What we'll do then is we're going to press Alt W to get out of the top viewport. We're going to go to the camera view and we're going to press the letter P on our keyboard, which notice took us to perspective instead of camera. And the reason why we went to perspective is because we want to zoom out and zoom in of this space, and we don't want our camera to get adjusted according to that. We just want to zoom out to create the hole. If you do that while you're still on camera, then you'll notice the camera in the top viewport will start moving around. That's why we converted it to perspective, because now we're going to zoom out and we're going to use the orbit in the lower interface bar. And what we're going to do is we're going to try to see the spot where we created the door. The door has to be 2 meters, so we're going to change the rectangle to 2 meters. We're going to press on the wall. We're going to go to Create, Compound Objects, Create Geometry Compound Objects. Then we're going to go to Boolean, pick operand B, and we're going to click on the area where we created the rectangle. And there we have it. We now have a gap where the door is, which makes it a lot more realistic. Now we can just press C on our keyboard and it'll take us back to the camera view. What we want to do next is we want to start importing furniture. I just went to the top viewport. I know that because it's highlighted. We can go to Import. And then I downloaded them. They're in downloads. There are various websites that you can use to download blocks for 3D Max. I already downloaded a few, so I'll just double click on them, merge objects with current scene, convert unit, and we'll press OK. Yes. And our light fixture is now imported into our scene. So we're going to move it around by using the Move tool, the selected Move tool. And we're going to close our snaps because they're a bit distracting for this. And we're going to move it in terms of where we want it to be in plan. You'll notice that in the front viewport, it won't be in the correct space. If you find that your view, you don't have anything in your front viewport, always just click on Zoom Extents in the lower interface bar, and it will show you where your things are, where your objects are. And what we're going to do is we're going to also move it up in terms of the front viewport. And then we can go to Import again and import the rest of the furniture. It's the same process over and over again. We'll press yes, and the bed is imported into our scene. You'll notice that the bed is a bit too big and the headboard is on this side, while here we want it to be on this side. So what we're going to do is we're rotating using the rotate tool, and we're going to turn it around. We're going to turn it around. Okay, and we're going to move it in terms of place of where we want it to be. What we can do then is use the scale tool, which is over here, and scale it down to the size that we want it to be. Move it a bit again, go back to scale, and we can also just enlarge it in terms of width so that it fits the bed that we actually have. Then when we go to Alt W, we also have to fix it in terms of the front viewport. So we have to always fix it in terms of both viewports. Make sure you don't just focus on one and you forget the other, and then the furniture you have starts looking a bit awkward. And then we can move it down. where we want it to be. Okay. Then we can also import the side tables. Okay. And we can move them where we want them to be. First in the top viewport, and then we're going to go to the front viewport. So we're going to just move them next to the bed exactly. And then we're going to press Shift and drag it to the other side as well. And we can press Copy. Okay, Alt W. Make sure it's correct in terms of placement in the front viewport, and it is, so I don't need to make any changes. Notice this was the door that we created. This is the light fixture we imported, the bed, and the two bedside tables, and this is the table and the chair that we created in the previous tutorial. Again, the furniture created in the previous tutorial isn't exactly nice furniture. It was just there to show you how to use the modifiers. So obviously when you import furniture, it's a lot more realistic, but I hope you learned a lot from the modifiers. What we can do now is we can start adding materials. If we go to the camera view, we notice that our camera is way too zoomed in on one spot. It doesn't show us the room as a whole. So what we can do is we can click on the camera that we did in the previous tutorial. We can go to modify and we can choose a smaller number. And that way it will show us more within the perspective itself. Notice if you go to the camera view and you use orbit and you start moving it around, the camera also on the top viewport moves. So that's why in the previous step we pressed on P so that our camera doesn't move because we didn't want it to. But this time if we actually want to adjust it and we want the camera to be adjusted, we can move it around ever so slightly using the orbit tool, and our camera is also going to get adjusted. What we can do is we can start importing materials now. So if you press the letter M on your keyboard, you're going to get something called the material editor. I prefer using the compact material editor, which when you go to modes, you can go to compact material editor. This one for me is a lot easier to use. If you're not on standard here, then change it and make sure it's on standard because that's the rendering that we are using. You can go to the circles, make sure all your circles look like this. If they don't, then click and drag on all of them until they look something like this. Now what we're going to do is we're going to add parquet. The parquet was already chosen. I went to Google and I chose a flat image of parquet. What I'm going to do now is I'm going to go to Maps, Diffuse Color. I'm going to press on the None. I'm going to go to Bitmap, double click on it, and I save the images in Pictures. So I'll go here and I choose this type of parquet. So I'll double click on it and notice the circle starts to change according to what we added. We can go back to parent, which is this button. Go back to parent. We can press on it and add it to bump as well. We'll press on instance. We'll press OK. This makes our material a little bit bumpier. And we can change the numbers according to how bumpy we want it to be. So currently it's on 30. We can try it and see if it works. If it doesn't, we can come back and change it. You also have specular levels and glossiness. This adjusts the shininess of your object, so you can make the parquet a little bit shiny. Obviously, it's not like a mirror or glass that we want it to be so shiny. So we can adjust it a bit until we're satisfied with how it looks like. Then we can press on it and drag it to the flooring level. If we want to see our materials in the camera view, then we can click on this button, which is Show Shaded Material in Viewport. Then you'll notice it turns to brown. We can go on the Select and Move tool. We can press on this specific rectangle that we created for the flooring. And then we can go to UVW map. You'll notice that in the first step we didn't see the wood because what 3D Max did was that it took that image and stretched it on the flooring, just one image. What we want to do is we want to repeat the same image several times. That's what UVW map does. we'll choose box, and then we can adjust how many times we want to repeat the same image until it looks realistic to us. Once we're satisfied, we can leave it. Make sure that real world map size is not ticked. If it is, you won't be able to adjust. So this is how we add materials to the space. We can also go to another circle, and from ambient and diffuse, for example, choose a blue color. So if we choose a blue color, we can then change its opacity. So for example, if I put it on 50, and this is for the glass, or I can put it on like 20, which is something that's very transparent. I can even change the shade if I'm not satisfied with it. I can also go to specular levels and make this a lot shinier because it's glass. Then I can click and drag it to the area that I want to render. We can rename it as glass. Press OK. And this will become see-through once we render. Then we can do the same for the walls. For example, we can go to another circle, and then we can go to maps. We can go to diffuse color, bitmap, and we can choose white brick, for example. Go back to parent, make sure it's show shaded material. We can also bump this material instance. Okay, then we can click and drag it on the areas we want it to be rendered in. And then we can also go to UVW map and go to box and change the dimensions until we're satisfied with how they look like. Obviously, this is not how it's gonna look like. This is just the camera view shows you an image, a shaded image of it, and then when we render it using the render tool after we've put lights into it, you'll notice that it's completely different. So if we're done with adding materials, we can close the material editor. If we have a object that we want one side of it to be different material, notice that this gets applied. The brick, for example, got applied on the model from beginning to end. So even if I zoom out, notice the exterior is also brick. So for example, if I wanted one of the walls to be something different, then I'll have to detach it. What I'll have to do is I'll have to go to edit poly and then press on polygon, and then I'll have to choose the area that I want to detach, and I can go down to detach, press on, and then this area is now detached. So for example, if I wanted to add wallpaper or something different on it, I can actually do that. In the next tutorial, we'll learn how to add lighting to your space. So go on to the next tutorial if you want to learn more.